Did you find that uncomfortable? Perhaps you wrote disabled or wheelchair user. You may have non-verbal written down. You are right.
But, there.
But there is much more to me than the body I'm trapped in. I'm not meant to be here today. After I was born, my parents were told that I might make it to age 12 if I was lucky. But now, at age 15, I've defied the expectations of the medical profession, and my quadriplegic, kidney transplanted, oxygen-dependent body limbs, or rather, sits, on. So why am I here today? The short answer is to share some of my story, and in doing so, to encourage you in your mission as roof breakers. The long answer is prayer. Without lots and lots and lots of prayer from people I know and even people I've never met, I wouldn't be here today. When my mother was 36 weeks pregnant with me, she was in a car accident and I started to lose blood and oxygen. My body began to shut down, my brain never recovered, so I ended up with cerebral palsy. I have no independent movement of my arms and legs. Over time, the spasms caused by the brain damage have given me scoliosis of the spine. My kidneys never recovered from the initial trauma either. I spent most of the first 3 years of my life in and out of hospital on dialysis. Just before my 4th birthday, I received a kidney transplant which changed my life dramatically. But within a few weeks, I was back in hospital fighting a respiratory virus, which has left me with damaged lungs. I need 5 litres of extra oxygen a minute and use a ventilator each night. Of all my diagnoses, it is being unable to speak that has had the most profound impact on my life. I wrote every word of this presentation. The voice you hear is not mine. It is my friend, Alaric's. This board that has changed my life is actually really simple. If I wanted to say the word hi, I would look at the grid the H is in. Because the H is highlighted in green, I would then look at the green square above it. My communication partner would then sound out H. Next, I'd look at the grid the I is in, and as that letter is highlighted in red, I would look at the red square. My communication partner would say hi, and to confirm that they've got it right, I would then look at the tick box. But I have not always been able to communicate in this way. When I started school, my communication was limited to smiling and frowning. Based on my outward appearances and with little ability to communicate, I was given the label profound and multiple learning disabilities. This label defined the education I was given, because with a profound and multiple learning disability, it was obvious, as far as the professionals were concerned, that I would never learn to read or write. So at school, I was not taught literacy. When I was 7, my mother took me out of school for a couple of hours a day to learn to read and write. Shortly before my 9th birthday, I had learnt enough to spell out everything I wanted to write. It took my mother a few days to work out I could also now spell out everything I wanted to say. One of the first questions my family asked me was whether I knew Jesus. As the son of a vicar, this was an unusual question, given I'd been proving to everyone over the year before that I didn't have a learning disability. For as long as I can remember, we had read Bible stories at home and prayed. But my parents were not prepared for my answer that day. This was my chance to tell them about my time in Jesus' garden. When I was very ill, in intensive care with a respiratory virus, I went to Jesus' garden, a place beyond description where I'd climb trees and run about in an uninhibited body. This experience changed my view of death, and I longed to go back forever. But in the meantime, I've been given a job to do. How many other children are there with experiences of Jesus and no voice to share them? Have we got ears to hear of their faith? What could they teach us? For the children who don't get a literacy education due to their label, I campaign for them through my charity, Teach Us Too. If there's one thing which is annoying as a non-verbal person, it's when people assume that because we don't speak, we are just the same as pre-verbal toddlers. People approaching me with high voices, speaking slower than usual, and obviously not expecting me to understand as they then talk over me to a carer or parent. When I read about Jesus' interactions with people, he is always very careful to communicate with the people he is healing in a way that is respecting of them. For the deaf and mute man in Mark 7, Jesus leads him away from the crowd and demonstrates a healing for him by putting his fingers in his ears and spitting on his tongue. When I was very young, lots of people wanted to help my parents, and one of them started a service for preschool children called Little Lights, so I could be part of a church group with people my own age. It was a wonderful example of inclusive preschool worship with songs and interactive Bible stories. Although lots of people asked my parents if they could help, not many liked the answer. Please come and hold the baby. I was an unhappy, unwell baby. But one person did come to the house to cuddle me. In time, she started to take me out for walks, and as I got older, she would take me in my wheelchair to visit all of the lonely people in our town. With a small ministry of my own, I felt a valued part of the community. As I've got older, it has become more of a challenge to always be included. For example, my wheelchair often only fitted near the back of churches with pews, which made it harder to see the action at the front. Often I would end up out of my chair and further forward on my mother's knees. But these are quite tight places, and it was sometimes a squeeze. The Disability Discrimination Act 2005 required churches to change their buildings and make them accessible, so I've not had issues getting into our rural churches, but the position of where the wheelchair space is says a lot about how welcome and included people can feel. Jesus reached out to those on the edge of society, the lepers, the beggars, the blind men by the side of the road, and often they would end up as part of his group. As a church community, we need to show another way from the norms of society. In my present church, in a nearby town, the wheelchair pew is in the middle of the building and double the width. It's great to be included in the heart of the worshipping community. Ponder on this question for a minute. What is true inclusion? True inclusion goes much further than the baseline of accommodating different needs and disabilities. True inclusion values every person as a member of the body of Christ, where disabled people are recognised as having gifts to bring to the community. When we are valued for what we bring, it's amazing the ways it can be found to include us. In March of 2020, a week before the country went into lockdown, I started shielding and I could not attend my youth group. With just 1 day's notice, my youth group leader rigged up her phone and I joined on a WhatsApp call. By her own admission, the youth worker is not a technology whiz, but they couldn't imagine leaving me out, so I joined the Bible study and people chatted to me afterwards like normal. For Bible studies and small groups, it really helps me to have the questions in advance so that I can share them in the group and listen to everyone else's ideas rather than spend my time typing. Then I can type and join the conversation about ideas at the time. Leaders sharing their plan makes all the difference for me. When it comes to services led by the youth group, I usually write a poem with Alaric, which he reads out for both of us. In everything I do with my church youth group, I'm not presented with the plan and asked how I want to fit in. Instead, my youth worker plans with me in mind and already has ideas about how I can fit in. For example, games are adapted so that I can join in, and now everyone wants me on their dodgeball team because my wheelchair is good to hide behind and the opposing team feel bad throwing balls at me. Other times, I just take on another role. For example, when my youth group went rock climbing, I joined the group of encouragers at the bottom. What has made my inclusion in church successful? It all comes down to one word. Ask. Ask what helps. Ask how someone wants to be included. Ask what gifts they have to bring to the church. When Jesus met people, he never assumed he knew what they wanted. Having healed one blind person, he didn't meet the next one and just heal them because that's what blind people want. Instead, he asked each person, "What can I do for you?" So our ambition is to make the church visibly welcoming to everyone, disabled or not, and that's grounded in our relationship with those people. What works for one person won't be the same for someone else, and what helps one day won't always help the next. Throughout my life, one attitude which has made the biggest difference is the ability to think out of the box. And one of my all-time favourite stories is of the four friends who thought out of the box and unroofed the roof. As you go out to break down the barriers and model a church where each member is valued for the contribution they bring, I leave you with my poem, Thinking Out of the Box. Thinking out of the box. You can't include me, so don't ever pretend my contribution is valuable and that society is richer in diversity, because I know my disability is awkward to accommodate. It is too much trouble. I bring nothing but hassle. I won't believe a can-do attitude can change anything. This is a reverse poem. I will now read it from the bottom line up. A can-do attitude can change anything. I won't believe I bring nothing but hassle. It is too much trouble. My disability is awkward to accommodate. Because I know society is richer in diversity and that my contribution is valuable. So don't ever pretend that you can't include me.